Welcome, everybody, to our podcast, Next Level Real Talk with Sheldon and David. So, if you're listening
Welcome
to this,
back.
we appreciate you coming on back and continuing this journey with us. Um, you
If it's
know,
your first time, I hope you go back and listen to other podcasts because they kind of lead into what we're talking about, gives you background, and but we're glad you're here today. So stay with us and listen in.
yeah, they have been. We're trying to make them a little bit of a sequence, right? So,
Hmm.
or at least little bit of a lead in, and at the end of the last one, we were talking about um, kind of that saying that my mom said. You know how you kind of funny
Yeah.
how much your mom influences you. I've mentioned my mom like 20 times on this stupid podcast already. But my mom had that saying that you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. She's like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That whole idea of just
Hmm.
being kind of fed up. Um,
Yeah.
and we were talking about that idea that what is it, if you're here and you're listening and what are you wanting to get out of it? And I think that one of the reasons, maybe, other than just curiosity about me and Dave, yeah, if you know us, you're like, oh,
Hmm.
wow, that's weird. That's, or whatever, was this idea of being stressed out, right? Being sick and
Yep.
tired of being sick and tired. And what does that look like for us, for people, for me, Um, you had, a lot of times this idea of, okay, maybe I need to look at things differently. A lot of times it's a major life event before we take the impetus to say, maybe I need to look at things differently, right? Like for
Hmm.
you, um, it was the
Divorce.
divorce, right? It
Hmm.
was this big traumatic event in your life that caused you to want to say, take responsibility, right? And sort of turn
Yep.
inside and say, what can I do? What did I do? But also, what can I do differently about how I'm being, right?
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes it's sickness, right? People get sick or they have a, near death
Finances.
experience or, fired from a job or whatever it is. A lot of
Hmm.
times it's a dramatic big thing. And we're hoping that this will reach you if you're listening before that happens, right? That
Yeah.
the idea of
And
just stress,
mhm.
anxiety, if you're feeling like a low level, low grade anxiety all the time, which so many of us do, right? Um, and I think one of the things about that anxiety, having a low level of stress, let's say you're frustrated. A lot of times people can be frustrated in a relationship, but they just think that's the way relationships are. So they're just not fundamentally not happy, stressed out. You're not happy with your job, your boss is a jerk, all that kind of stuff. And you're just sort of stressed out. You're stressed out with your finances. Um, so it's, relationships, finances, money, all that kind of jobs, all of those things create these stresses that we just live with all the time.
and and sometimes, many times, it's not like, okay, I all of a sudden got this stress. Sometimes it builds up slowly. You're like, okay, I'm just used to feeling this way. Okay. And then a year later, 2 years later, it's going like, this is just normal, but it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And you're like, well, I can't get out of this.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, one, being able to notice it. Okay, I'm just not happy. Why am I not being happy? Get there, like you just said, get there quicker.
Yep.
Because some people, they've been there for years and now it's going to take a little bit of time to get out.
Yep.
And then they get so deep and sick and tired of being sick and tired, they need that traumatic situation to get them out,
Yeah.
which is sad. But
There are some sayings in the spiritual communities and the self help they talk about, um, is suffering necessary, right? And it technically isn't. And yet, in some ways, it is because if your life is just sort of okay and you're feeling that stress, you're feeling that anxiety, but you don't really take the time to, it doesn't motivate you to look at things differently because it's like, it's okay. It's not bad.
mhm,
And the other thing I was going to say is like so many of us in the world and in the country right now, everybody's stressed out, you
mhm,
know, the financial situation in the economy, the political situation, the wars, all of that stuff. Are we on the verge of World War III and a nuclear holocaust? You know what I mean? There's so many things that are happening. Are we is there an environmental collapse that's about to happen, right? There's so many things that we're on the verge of, or that that are in our kind of background, that are just sitting in the background of our lives, that are causing stress and anxiety, that it's normal. Like being
mhm,
stressed out is the new norm, right? Um, but there hopefully, or what we're going to suggest and say is that there is a way to experience those things and not feel stressed out. And that's
Hmm.
sort of the key, is that you don't have to react to the external circumstances the same way you always have, which is
You
with
can
the
have
stressors.
peace and happiness in a chaotic world.
Yeah,
Sounds backwards,
counterintuitive.
but yeah,
Yeah,
counterintuitive, but it's true. I mean, things are stressing out. Yes, this is going on. It's a stressor, but is it something I can fix myself,
yeah,
or can I just kind of breathe, relax, be in my space, and then think about what I can do to make a difference?
right,
You know, so
right.
instead of overthinking, and we'll get to that probably later in the episode here about how that mind, if you get too stressed out in your mind, nothing's working.
Yep,
Those,
yep,
it's all popping in your head. You're just like, whoa, it
yep.
doesn't give you the right thinking process. And we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Right. Uh, so, like what you're saying, basically, and in the essence of what you're saying is that your peace is not dependent on what's happening in the world around you, right? I mean, that's,
Correct. Yeah.
the essence of that. And that's a deep and profound teaching that is in all of the religions that I've ever studied, is that your peace is independent of the external circumstances. In the Bible, talk the peace that passes all understanding.
Peace beyond all understanding.
Peace
It's in
beyond
the
all
Bible.
understanding. And
It's the
what
Bible.
is and why does it even say that? It's because it's not in the mind, right? You when you try to comprehend and grasp, gee, there's so much stuff going on, and you're thinking about it. It's a mental function that gets you caught up in the stress, right? Because your brain is part of your brain is about survival. There's a survival instinct that kicks in, and we'll talk about that later. But it creates all
Hmm.
these stressors in your body, the response, and you have to get out of that down into what the heart space is, and there's different approaches to how you get there in different religions, different
Hmm.
traditions. Jesus always talked about directly about the heart, right? And that's why they have all the religious iconography, right? Where you don't like them to have statues of Jesus with his chest torn open. You got a big pounding heart in the middle of it. It's kind of gross, right? Have you ever seen those statues, right? You go, "Rah," and it's just like a
No,
pound,
I have
huh?
not.
You've
I
never
haven't
seen
seen
those? Oh
those.
man, they
No.
totally have them. A full blown, statue of Jesus, and there's like this, and his heart's literally his chest cavity is ripped open, and you have a heart in the middle of it pounding, because it's
Hmm.
the heart of Jesus. And it's just like, wow, that is crazy. The idea that you have to get into your heart, and so I do think that there's different ways. One of the
Hmm.
things I always like to say is that it's like a valve. When you're in your mind, your heart is not open because you're mental. And so when you quiet the
Hmm.
mind, the heart naturally opens. And so in Buddhism, they talked about quieting the mind through meditation, and the heart naturally opens. And they talk about compassion arising naturally. Like uh, it's not, oh, I'm doing the right thing and I should because, in society
Yeah.
they tell me to be nice or whatever, but I really hate you, but I'm going to pretend like I'm being nice to you. That kind of thing. It's true compassion coming from
True.
a place of
And it's
love and empathy,
yeah.
which only happens when you're out of your judgment of your mind. Does it make sense?
So,
Right?
and the exact same thing you're saying in my devotionals that I always do, every now and then it'll pop up. It says, "Sit quietly with me." I'm saying, in other words, like quiet the mind,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
let your mind be quiet, let it all go, and then I can talk to you. It's one of
Yes.
those, you need to be away from the world. Yes, there's times we need to talk when there's, stress is going on, but if you can sit quietly, that's when I really
And
I hear a lot more.
I think it's in the Bible, right? It's in the Course of Miracles, and I didn't really know it was in the Bible. Still small voice.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah? I didn't realize
Hmm.
that was a biblical expression because it's in the
Yeah.
Course of
Well, it's
Miracles,
not
but
really an expression, but it's like, it's, just hearing,
yeah,
I don't hear voices, but it comes to my mind.
right, right,
Um, Several times I've told those stories, and it's kind of like, whoa, I didn't get that. I
yeah,
didn't realize that because I was
right.
overthinking. I had 10,000 things in my brain,
Well, you have that
and
one that we talked about that you talked about in another episode, and maybe it was in your story about when you're driving the truck.
yeah,
Do you want
um,
to share that one? Because I think it's right in what we're talking
I
about.
think yeah, it would fit right
I think
now.
it's worth
Um,
resharing, but it
yeah,
also is highlighting what we're talking about, that still small voice, the quieting of the mind, so that um, inspired thought or revelation or
yeah,
guidance or intuition or higher self guidance, there's a lot of different ways that spiritual communities will talk about this. Oh, I talked to my higher self and I got, connected or whatever. um,
hmm
it's, people express it differently. Well, the Holy
Oh,
Spirit
totally.
came to me and gave me guidance, or whatever you want to call it. I'm actually not particular about the words we use to describe it, but the
Hmm.
process of it is
The
really
process of it,
important.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So,
So
s- yeah, so for me, it was after the divorce, and just obviously things were racing in my brain, and it was really hard. Um, and my principal, when I talked to him, said, my brain's going crazy. One thing he said to me is like, just go home, quiet your mind and relax. Just come back tomorrow and be ready to work. And so my brain was going, 1,000 miles a minute, just way too fast. There's so much minutia up there, just everything popping. Um,
we
so I
talked about the
didn't,
monkey mind, right?
yes, the monkey mind.
Bouncing from
And
one thing to almost incoherently, just
it's just,
so many
yeah.
thoughts popping in.
And I couldn't stop. And that's why I
Yep.
was so tired to this. And one day I'm at home, I'm driving to work. I remember this exact spot, I-10 and US 60. And I'm freaking out because I'm so busy. I got that anxiety in me, that feeling is like, oh, what's going on, man? This is just, I can't deal with this right now. And accounting, I'm teaching accounting. It's kind of hard to just walk in and do a lesson. It's lessons.
You got to
Um,
plan it.
yeah, you got to plan it and it's got to be exact. And so I'm just like, what do I do? I don't have anything to do the next 3 days. I just cannot do this. And or I can't do it. What I want to do today, I'm stressed out. And all of a sudden, I just took a breath. I said, quiet, just relax. So I quieted my mind a little bit. I'm driving. No, I did not close my eyes. No, I did not go to sleep. No, I did not do that. It was just a turn the radio off and breathe while I'm driving. Just breathe. I took a couple breaths, and I'm sitting there, and literally as I go under the US 60 right there, and I'm like, oh, because my mind is now clear. I got all the monkey brain stuff is going away, all the stuff that I don't need to worry about. And it's like exercise 365. I remember the exact exercise. Don't worry about that one. It's an exercise that does the entire spreadsheet, goes from step one to step Z, step 10,000, whatever you want to call it, A to Z. And they have to do the whole thing process. Um, so they learned all this. And I'm like, oh, that's a 3-day activity to where I can just help them, but not have to plan a lesson because they've already learned this. So then, yes, there are parts like, hey guys, don't forget to do this. Here's this part of the spreadsheet. Here's the trial balance. Make sure you do this. I could talk about stuff I already knew and they already knew. So it wasn't like, okay, I got to teach you how to do this, and which overpowers the brain. I was like, I almost came to tears, going like, oh my gosh,
Thank you.
that's the answer.
Yeah.
And me quieting my mind and getting all that stuff out, just taking a moment, allowed me to hear. And it wasn't a voice; it was just in my brain. If you want
Yep.
to, I want to hear, David, please
Like a
do
knowing
exercise
just pops in,
365.
right?
Yeah, it's just like, whoa, where'd that come from? That to me was God talking to me, saying,
Yep.
I got this.
Mhm.
Just need to calm down. And and I was
Calm
like,
the F down,
wow.
dude.
Yeah. He's like, just dude, chill. Chillax, dude. I was like, yeah, no, I got this. But it's funny because we don't I'm worried about me. No one else can control this. I'm the one in the problem. No, but it was weird how that brain letting it quiet down, just that I'm driving. So it's not like, as I said, I'm not sitting there laying on bed on my knees, closing my eyes. I am literally driving a truck, my pickup truck, breathing, and that helped me relax enough to hear what he was trying to say. Just
To open.
you're right, yeah. To open
Yeah.
open my mind,
Yep.
which actually opened my heart, which
Mhm.
opened my mind.
Yep.
So I got out of here and
Yep.
just relaxed a little bit. So
Yep. That is
yeah,
huge.
and that's happened to me many a times since. And it's
Right.
just like I just got to quiet down and be like, oh, okay, yeah. Because I was thinking about A, B, C, D, X, Y, O. Oh no, I need you to do Q. Oh, but that was amongst 26 other letters that I
Yep.
wasn't thinking about.
Yep.
So,
It's funny, but it's very similar for me at the shop when I was managing my
mhm,
shop. Sometimes, car's not going right, repairs are delayed, whatever's happening. There's all this kind of intensity. The customer's pissed off and they're waiting for the car, whatever, right? And sometimes, there's all these conflicting priorities and demands. And when you just sort of relax and quiet your brain a little bit and go, versus freaking out about the customer or the whatever, or your service advisor should have done this, and you're mad that they didn't do this and parts screwed it up, or whatever the different things were that created all this chaos. And you just sit there and relax and go, okay. And boom, the direction would pop in your brain
yeah,
easily, right? It would just be like natural. It'd be like, oh. Okay, we're gonna do this.
It's
This is what
almost
we're gonna do.
scary,
Just
but
call
it
this,
does
boom,
its
boom,
thing.
boom,
Whoa.
and it didn't create any stress or trauma in your body, right? You're just
Hmm.
relaxed. I actually have always said that relaxation, being relaxed, cellularly, bodily relaxed on a deep and profound level is one of the higher spiritual achievements there is, because most of us aren't. If you
Hmm.
really think about it, people carry tension. There's tension in how you think, there's tension in how you feel emotionally and react, and there's tension in your body physically. So, in some of the teachings, they talk about, the four levels: the divine level, the mental level, the emotional level, the physical level, and they're all connected. So, there's these energetic levels of your beingness, right? And there's tension
Hmm.
in all of those, right? Or at least the lower three, other than divine level, right? And how to relax all of them, the more inside you're connected and relaxed. And breathing is this key component to all of this, right? You can relax on all of those levels. And the more relaxed you are, your body functions better, energetically, your mind functions better, emotionally you're calmer, and so you're not as reactive to
Hmm.
things. So this idea of um, relaxation is huge. It's kind of like underrated,
Big.
I think, in terms of people talking about it. They want to have
Hmm.
experiences or want to do this, whatever, but just being relaxed. Um, and you end up with more energy, right? So when I used to run my
Yeah.
shop, I wouldn't be tired at the end of the day, even though I was active. So I always tell
Hmm.
people that stress has nothing to do with activity level. In other words, you can be busy and doing a lot of things and not be stressed.
Yeah.
People think that they're connected and they're not, right? So you're doing a lot of work, you're working all day, you're coaching and all that kind of stuff, and you probably have more energy now than you used to at the end of the
Oh yeah,
day.
totally. And and right now, as the librarian, yes, for those that are laughing right now,
Dave's the
um,
librarian. Dave's the
yeah.
librarian. Never thought I'd hear those
So you
words.
know, all those out in the world, my mom is laughing in heaven too. Her and God do have jokes up there. I was an accounting teacher, swim coach, never was a reader, never was anything about libraries. Here I am, a librarian, which I love. Greatest job I have. I'm telling you, so much fun. But in that library job, there's a lot. I have my to do list. Boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, here comes a request from admin to print these posters for today's activities or tonight's sports. Here comes a teacher says, "Hey, can I get this for an activity?" Boom, boom. All of a sudden, everything's coming in. And it's like I can feel the stress. I can literally feel my body because
Hmm.
my brain is overthinking. I'm going like, "Oh my god, what am I do? What am I do?" I so here's something common to do. So in that, not the thing driving to work where I did that, but now I'm at work. I just go. I take 3 breaths. And I go, okay, where's my priorities? Okay, that's my one priority, but they need this. So let's do this, then this, then I'll come back to this. And whatever I don't get done, I'll do it tomorrow. But these are the ones that need to be done today. Rather than going like, it's like,
Yep.
stop.
Yep.
Because the brain is rushing so fast, it's not thinking really. It's thinking, but it's
Hmm.
not thinking correctly. And so that calm of three breaths, I let the shoulders relax. By the way, if you keep your shoulders up, you're not relaxing. So breathe,
Yeah.
let your body go, and then go, okay, here we go. And then look at it again and go, okay, what do I got? My from dad's wisdom, thank you, Dad, I love it, because this is what he always said. He goes, when you're stressing out, you're angry or something, go have a cup of coffee. Come back, go to it.
Yep.
Don't, if you're typing an email, go have a cup of coffee. And I said, don't drink coffee all day. He goes, have a tea then, son. You know what I mean.
You know what I mean? You get the point.
so so basically he was saying, go take a breath, come back, now get to it. I'm like, and I look back on like, wow, he was telling me that all those years, and here I am finally doing what he told me to do. Sorry, Dad, it took me a long time, but
We're slow learners, Dave. Me and you both.
yes, I call it football injuries. I want to say football injuries.
All those concussions.
I only had, yeah, never mind, too many to
So,
count.
yeah, yeah, played with them.
Yeah, yes.
Hey, so that's beautiful. Uh, I used to call that stop, drop, and breathe. So you
Mm,
stop, you drop into your heart, or you can call it in your stomach, and you just breathe, right? Stop, drop, and
mhm,
breathe. Breathe. Like when you can stop what you're doing, drop out of your head into your heart, and just sort of breathe for a couple of seconds. It
mhm,
also highlights this other thing I always used to talk about is the power of the pattern interrupting the normal response. So there's this idea of reaction. Something happens, you automatically do it. You it's like the Pavlovian dog response, where um, I guess I'll explain that now. Um, Pavlov's dog, if you've never heard of that, it's a psychology experiment. I believe the dude did it in like the 30s or maybe 50s or something like that. Pavlov, I think he was Russian, and he did this experiment. What he do was he would feed the dog a treat and ring a bell, and then he'd feed the dog a treat and ring a bell, feed the dog a treat, ring a bell, and he just did it over and over again. So he patterned and conditioned this dog, right, to associate the treat and the bell. So then what you could do is just ring the bell and he would expect a treat. And so he'd start to salivate. So that conditioning of his physical response, his reaction, as if he was going to get food, was now tied to a bell, which had nothing to
Hmm.
do with the food. And so that's what's called, I think it's called operant conditioning or something like that. Right? So we all have that now in our bodies. Somebody says something, your body reacts in a specific way
Hmm.
automatically. You react unconsciously, right? And so many of us have these reactive patterns to stressors or things in our life. Like somebody comes at me with something unexpected, I'm going to get stressed, right? I'm going to be
Hmm.
traumatized, I'm going to be upset, I'm going to be frustrated, I'm going to be
Which
overwhelmed,
is
all that kind of
normal
stuff.
in life, by the way. So don't think
Yes,
you're
right. So all
weird.
those things
That's
are happening
normal.
all the time, right? And so that's
Hmm.
one of the reasons why people are so stressed out, and there's so much anxiety and stress going on, right? So when you
Yep.
can train yourself to interrupt that pattern, which is that automatic kind of reaction, right? Then you learn how to respond, which is conscious. So
Hmm.
they always talk about reaction versus response, right? You
Yep.
can take a breath, you can
Hmm.
quiet yourself down, you can take a moment, you can think about it, you can analyze it, and then you respond. And so that's kind of what you're talking about in that example, right? Took a breath.
Yeah.
So I interrupted the pattern of stress and anxiety and anger and frustration and overwhelm. Took a
But just
couple of deep
stop.
breaths,
Hmm.
stopped, took a couple of deep breaths, dropped in, breathe,
Hmm.
and then you say, okay, now I'm responding consciously. You know what? This one makes the most sense to do first because that's the number
Yeah.
one priority for today. This one makes a sense. I can do that one second because I'll already be over there and doing this process, and it's easy to do after that one. Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? And then your brain
Yeah.
automatically functions better because
Yeah.
you've interrupted the pattern. So there's a couple of principles there, that stop, drop, and breathe, but also this pattern interrupt that are really key because most of us don't. Somebody says something, next thing you know, you're in a fight. Gee, I don't even know what happened. I
Yeah.
was yelling and screaming, or I blew my head off, or I cried,
Hmm.
or I did whatever, right? Um, without actually any awareness coming in. It's like an
Hmm.
unconscious reaction, right? And so when you can cut it, even with a
Yep.
few breaths and stop it for a moment, um, you can shift all of that. You have a window of opportunity to shift and
Yeah.
to do things differently, to surrender if you want, to open up. You know,
And as
things can come in.
yeah. As you were talking, I wanted to jump in real quick. Sorry.
Mhm.
Um, with the response, Pablo's dog, the like with me when I first started, when I went, doing all the stuff you're telling me to do to, breathe, go into relaxation. It took time. It took a while. It took
Mhm.
training, which was pretty tough because it's like, oh, this isn't what I don't have time for this. This isn't working. But now, as I just told you with that thing like in the library, boom, I just naturally, what's going on? I can feel my body stressing. It's like, okay, stop, stop. I can feel it. Let's get through this and go. So
Yep.
it takes time. So this isn't something that happens overnight. If it does, awesome for you. But it takes a little training. So as we go through this, I encourage you to stay with it as we talk about things because I'm many years down the road, it becomes a natural thing as a Pavlov's dog. So
Yeah, there's a thing called neuroplasticity, which is this idea that your brain is plastic. The neurons are plastic and they can change. Um, for those of us who are our age,
I'll be 60
neuroplasticity.
next in 2 weeks.
So yeah,
Six
so
zero.
so those of us who are in the, I know it's that's a mental one, right? That's a hard one. It's like, ooh,
Yeah.
geez, okay, got to breathe on that one. But
Oh.
so for those of us that are a little bit older, um, the old idea when we were growing up was that your brain was hardwired like wires on a motherboard. That by the time you were like 19, that wiring was set and you were done. It was done. You were wired the way you were wired, and that was genetic, and it was it. And there was no way to
Hmm.
change it. And they invented the fMRI, the functional MRI, in 1992. And that was allowing those detailed scans of the brains on a neuron by neuron level. You know those 3D models you've ever seen, like a 3D picture of the brain, and it has all these little like
Yeah.
wires and connections that looks like these little blood vessels. That's like an fMRI image. So it's very highly detailed and accurate imaging of the brain, of the neural
Mm.
networks and neural pathways in the brain. So that was invented, I think it was 1992. And I think it was like 1999 or 8. It was at the end of the 90s when they started to do these tests. And one of the first tests, as far as I know, the first test that happened was on British taxi drivers, these London taxi drivers. So they'd hook them up to the fMRI and they would scan their brains, and they noticed that spatial awareness and mapping in that area where all those internal maps are created in the brain were highly developed. There was denser neural pathways there, right? Well, if you're a taxi driver and you got to remember the entire city, this is pre Google Maps and pre internet and all that, then it would make sense, right? So the question was, oh, were these people genetically already had more dense neurons in their spatial thing, and that's why they became a taxi driver? Or was it the fact that they were a taxi driver, they trained their brain and developed these
And
networks,
became,
right?
yeah. Hmm.
And so over time, what they realized was it was not that they were already genetically predisposed, it was that they trained their brain. And so
Mm.
then this idea was that if you train your brain differently, you can create new neural pathways. So this idea of neural plasticity, that it's plastic, that it's malleable, that you can change the way your brain is wired, didn't start to come into into awareness even in the scientific community until the early 2000s, right? So now we're
Uh-huh.
like 20 years down the road. It's pretty common and accepted. There is neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, the idea that you can actually generate new neurons, which again was the other thing that was said that was
Hmm.
impossible, can't be done. Da, 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 da. And there's a ton of studies going on in how like meditation changes your brain, physically changes your brain. There's thousands of studies that have been going on in all the major
Hmm.
universities all across the world, um, basically quantifying, validating um, that when you change how you think, you actually can rewire your brain. So there's a lot of like Joe Dispenza, there's a lot of these spiritual teachers that are using the science, the neuroscience. They're literally hooking up to brain monitors and stuff like that, and then having you do, meditative exercises and seeing and watching and validating how these things are happening and what's changing in your body. So, um, when we talk about this idea, and actually Joe Dispenza has a great expression where he talks about the software. Like you had to say, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to, like you said, you had to train it, right? It took
Yep.
practice, right? So
Hmm.
when you took that time and you practiced it regularly when you're not stressed, right? And this is another one of those
Yeah.
keys to how you do this is that
Hmm.
you need to practice it when you're not stressed. So when you are
Hmm.
stressed, it happens automatically, just like your story, right? You didn't think
Hmm.
it just sort of happened. You knew what you needed to do. Ah, okay, I'm feeling that stress. I'm going to take a couple deep breaths. Let me chill out for a second here. Let me go through this. Okay, boom. And then it just happens, right? But it's because you've been training it for years, right? And you've been
Yeah.
doing it. So now it's like this reflex. And so the way Joe Dispenza talks about that is that the software program, the software is like the um, mental thing that you had to remember to stop, to drop, to breathe, right? You had to consciously remember that at first, becomes hardware, meaning it becomes your new reaction, your new normal in the future when you've trained it enough. Now you don't have to stop and think about it, you just do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it becomes the new default. Your default
Hmm.
reaction is now to stop, to drop, to breathe, to relax, to surrender, to quiet the mind, to do all these things to connect and then allow this information, these ideas to sort of just pop into your head. Um, so that is absolutely trainable. And so one of the things when I was coaching people, I would say, look, you know, this stuff is like working out, you know. And
Yeah.
to anybody who's listening, you want to change how your body looks,
You got to
change what
work
you
out.
eat, work out, change what you're doing with it, you know what I mean? And it'll change, you know what I mean? It
Hmm.
just will. You will develop muscles, you'll burn fat, whatever, right? And there's a million different techniques on how you can do that, but that's the bottom line.
The
Move the
basic
body
bottom
more,
line.
change what you eat,
Hmm.
your body's going to change, right? Same with your mind. Change what you feed
And
it, change how you use it, and it will
hmm
change. Literally
and you,
rewire.
yeah,
Um,
you train yourself for. I mean, obviously, any like sports stuff too. You're training, but you got to train in any situation. Like
yes.
what we're talking about now is to relax, and be. as I go through the meditation when I'm not stressed in a normal day, then when I start stressing, it's like I don't have to think about it. I just naturally
Right.
do it.
That is
And
absolutely one of the keys is that you have to train
yeah,
when you're not stressed so that when you are stressed it's automatic. It's just like
yeah,
emergency procedures for firefighters or,
yeah.
you know,
And
military personnel, like the emergency procedures and how to eject from an aircraft or whatever it is. What do you do? Um, and you train and
mhm,
drill those things a million times. So when, all the stuff happens, there's no panic. It's just remote. It's automatic. Right.
yeah.
Um,
The and I'll do a quick shout out to my pastor, Pastor Darren, Focus 314. Shout out, brother. We were going through a series, and as we're talking to me, hey, that was a series we just talked about. But when you're in a valley, you know, you're going through this valley. He goes, you need to train yourself before you get to the bottom of that valley.
mhm,
So if you're going through this and you get to that valley, it's like, okay, this is not a good spot, but I have the tools to get myself out. And so that's exactly what we're talking about now is just train yourself in daily things, the breathing, the thinking, the just relaxing, and then being ready so that when that stress does come, wow, you it kicks in naturally.
mhm.
So
Absolutely, 100%.
yeah.
So, in going with what you were saying about you have to train and you have to train your brain and you have to practice when you're not stressed out, just so people understand the impact of training your brain, um, they've done real neuroscience studies. And neuroscience is like a brand new field. It's literally like 20 years old with the fMRI and all that kind of stuff. Is not that old of a field of study, but there's neuroscientific evidence now. Uh, Laboratory documented that if you did, like, for example, a 30-minute meditation and you did it for 2 weeks, it physically immeasurably changes your brain. Like they can measure the difference in 2 weeks on an fMRI.
Wow.
That's how profound it is. Um, one of the other things that was really interesting on a short-term 2-week meditation, they trained these college kids who were studying for the GRE, the graduate record exam, and they taught them how to meditate, and they found, and then this was a placebo controlled double blind study, a 30% increase in the graduate record exam test scores for the people that meditated for 2 weeks. That is a
Mm,
huge difference. And one of the things is, and we'll talk about it a little later, is what cortisol does to your brain, but it inhibits the prefrontal cortex and how you think
mm-hmm,
and problem solving and all that kind of stuff. So when you're stressed, you're actually inhibiting your brain's ability to solve problems. So if you can relieve that stress by stopping, dropping breathing, by breathing for a little bit, by relaxing, by meditating, whatever that technique is, you actually open up your prefrontal cortex and you can think better. And so these
mm-hmm.
things have all been the brain change stuff. Um, there's videos of, like, looks like ET where you see whoop, bam, new neural pathways are developed. But just like training in the gym, if you went to the gym and you trained and you worked out one time, what would you do? You'd break down some muscles and maybe burn a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of fat, and the muscles would be sore. And then
I'll be
you never
sore.
did it
Yeah.
again. Your body would go right back to the way it was, right?
Yeah.
No
You didn't do
difference, no
anything.
difference, right? But if you
Mm-hmm.
train continuously, even a small little bit, eventually you're going to build those new muscles in a different way. You're going to reshape your body. You're going to do certain things. You're going to burn some fat, all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden you're going to see changes, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same with your brain. So your brain is no different. And that's what Joe Dispenza was talking about, with the software becomes the new hardware, and now it's hardwired in, and it becomes your natural, your new
Yeah.
normal reaction, right? Um, but we have to train it. So there
Yeah.
you go. You have to train these things. Um,
You you talked. I think this might be the right time to bring it up. You talked about getting out of your brain and into your heart, into your body. Um, and now when I don't have as much anymore, but at one point when I was having the anxiety and just I could feel it, just everything in my body, I could feel it on my legs, my body, my stomach, my arms, just like, whoa, what is this? And at one point it'd be like my brain would go. I was
would
like,
it
what
would
is
it
this? What
feel
are you
like? Would it
doing?
just be tension or tingling, or what would happen when you say you feel
Yes,
it
the
all over?
above.
Huh?
It's it's just God, how you even explain that feeling? It's so weird. It's almost like nauseated a little bit,
Yeah.
um, and just feeling almost feeling tingle. Yeah, it would kind of like being tingles throughout, and it's just my body just going into a situation,
Hmm.
um, and I'll be upfront with it. Many times it was going into a family function, where my ex would be there, and it was at the early stages of the divorce, so that was
Hmm.
really hard.
Hmm.
Um, Just know that now we're very cordial, get
Yep.
along. There's not that anxiety anymore at all.
Yep.
But when I in those first times, I would literally be in the truck going like, oh, what am I doing? This is, I mean, it's like I wanted to throw up.
Yep.
I could feel just my body just tensing up,
Yep.
and maybe a little tingling. I guess you could say that's what it was. But it was just that when you feel anxiety,
Yep.
I was feeling it, but
Almost
I
like a
was
panic
fighting it.
attack starting to happen to you.
Yes, totally panic. Yeah. So I'm fighting it up here, going like, "What is this? Oh my gosh, stop this way!" So I started arguing with myself, started fighting it, and then one time I just said, "Huh, this is a new feeling. I may not ever feel this again. This is weird. Let me just experience it." And so I still had it, but I could walk into the house and go, "I'm okay." As I'm in the middle of this anxiety, near panic attack, ready to throw up, I'm going, that's kind of cool. Like, I'm in the middle of a what the hell's going on in my body? But this was kind of, instead of being angry with the feeling, just how do I say, jumping into the feeling and going like, wow, this is pretty
Dude.
bizarre. And
So
enjoying, that's the right
so
word, enjoying the process of that
so that is
weirdness.
that is super freaking cool. I have to so to me, that is what you're literally describing is you must become as a child to return to the kingdom of heaven.
Hmm.
Okay. What is a child state? Innocent wonder. A child has innocent wonder about everything. They don't know whether it's good or bad. They're like, what's happening? Why is that person's head getting chopped off? I don't, whatever. They don't, doesn't matter what it is. They're curious.
Hmm.
Instill the fear. We instill all of the trauma. We freak the kids out. They're curious, right? And you
Hmm.
have to become like that to return to the kingdom of heaven. So that's literally what you did. Whoa, what's going on in my body? Wow, this is wild. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Oh my God. It doesn't feel good. It feels like crap, but gee, many crickets. And that ability to create a witness, which is separation from you rather than you going, oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm terrible. This is such a terrible thing, blah, blah, blah. And you're in this kind of victim thing. You were able to separate
Yeah.
and witness the things happening to inside your own body, and you got out of your head because you started tripping on the physical, which is another
Hmm.
key to stop traumatizing and mentally is you sort of witness it, right? And then you were able to witness what was going on in your with your body. And sometimes, and not sometimes, but when you are able to do that, it becomes less personal, right? It's like less
Hmm.
traumatic because now you're just tripping on, wow, man, I literally think I'm going to throw up right now. And my right arm is going freaking numb. There's this tingling and there's a sickness in my stomach and my heart's palpitating. And whoa, this is wild, right? And have a little bit of that energy, right? Of curiosity and
Hmm.
fascination with what that's going on. And that allows, and because that's a form of relaxation, right? And you're breathing into the whole thing and you're relaxing. So what are you doing? You're relaxing your body physically. You're relaxing it emotionally because you're not attached to what's going on, and you're relaxing
Hmm.
mentally because you're like allowing everything to happen. And that's what allows release. That's what allows transformation, right? Or transmutation of an energy. When they talk about it on a spiritual level, they talk about taking this one kind of energy and shifting it into another because energy never is never created or destroyed. It's always there. You have to
Hmm.
transmute it and change the state of it, right? So you're taking a low energy and shifting it into a higher energy by not attaching to it. When you're tight physically, you hold on to the negative energy. When you're tight mentally, you're holding on to a concept or a way of being or a way of thinking, and this is the way it is in the world, and you're holding tight onto that. And when you're emotional, like, no, they're just bad and they hurt me and did it or whatever. So there's these physical, emotional, mental ways we have tightness, right? And when we can relax all of those, and it can start with the breath, right? And you
Hmm.
relax all of those things, then it opens a spaciousness and that allows this transmutation of energy to happen and allows the release. And then you have a completely different relationship to that event.
Yeah. Totally.
Dude, that is huge. That's
So
awesome.
yeah.
That's super advanced, by the way. So that's not like basic stuff. So if you're going starting down the path of learning how to breathe and relax, um, if that happens, awesome. You know what I mean? You've done really well. But both Dave and I have had these kinds of things, right? But it takes time. It takes
Yeah.
a little bit of time of practice, and
Hmm.
so. But again, understanding that you can literally rewire your brain You can rewire it pretty quickly. That's why when I had clients and I taught them a specific guided visualization, it's technically not even a meditation. It's like a guided visualization because you're picturing things all the time.
Hmm.
When you go that down that process and you do the thing repeatedly, they'd come back to me a week later and go, "I feel like a completely different human being." Like 1 week later, they would just feel completely shifted. So it doesn't take a lot of time per se, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
what happens when you feel stressed out? What is that internal reaction that happens?
Hmm.
Um, because one of the things that happens when stress and your body's physical response to that is completely normal and completely natural. Um, but it's supposed to be like you were being, and they always say, like, you always hear people talk about, oh, well, reaction to a saber-toothed tiger. I say, like, somebody's coming at you, want to fucking kick your ass or kill you, and
Or
somebody coming
beat you
at with
up.
you a
Yeah.
knife. Somebody's
Hmm.
coming at you with a knife or with their fist and they're ready to hit you in
Or
the
fight
face.
mode.
Yeah, you're going to go into stress reaction, which is fight
Hmm.
mode. And
Yep.
what is fight mode? If you think about that, then, and you think about it in terms of your stress reaction and your stress response as if somebody's coming to kick your ass, and that's how you think about it, then everything is perfectly normal and appropriate. What do I mean by that? You dump adrenaline into your body, you dump cortisol. Cortisol is called the stress hormone. Your heart rate goes up, your pupils dilate, your breathing shortens and gets shallow. You might get dry mouth, right? All of these functions that aren't necessary are being shut down. Your digestion is
Hmm.
shut down, your sex drive is shut down. um, One of the things that happens that most people don't realize is your immune function gets shut down. Wound healing on the surface
Mm.
increases. So if you got cut, it would heal and stop the bleeding. So that is a survival mechanism. But the ability of your body cells to heal themselves is repressed. And so your immune function response is repressed. It's repressed so effectively that if you were going to get like an organ transplant, they actually put you on cortisol for the rest of your life because the cortisol will repress your own immune function response because normally your body would attack that foreign object, that foreign heart, that foreign kidney or whatever.
Hmm.
They would attack it, right? Because it's not yours. Um, and so they use cortisol as a way of repressing your immune function. Now, all of that is appropriate, normal. If you're being attacked, it makes your body function better, right? That's what you want. I'm not here. One of the things that cortisol does was I was talking about earlier. Why the test scores is this cortical inhibition. It shuts down the prefrontal cortex, which is right behind your forehead. That is the kind of the part of the brain that makes us human. They say we have big prefrontal cortexes, right? That's where executive function, problem solving, decision making, memory recall. So all of those things are being repressed. Again, they call it cortical inhibition. And that's why when these people were learning how to meditate and they quieted their brain and they lowered their stress response, they got 30% increase in test scores. Why?
Mm.
Because they weren't having cortical inhibition. So they could problem solve, memory recall, executive function, decision making. So they made better decisions during the test. Does it make sense? So it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense, right? From that standpoint, it makes perfect sense from the standpoint, your body's reaction makes perfect sense from the standpoint of being attacked physically.
Hmm.
The problem with all of those responses is that your body responds exactly the same way to somebody cutting you off in traffic, you being late to work, you have got bills to pay, kids are nagging at you, wife is yelling at you, stress is on,
Or
you read the
husband's nagging
news,
at you.
you watch the evening news and you get stressed out about World War III, you get stressed out about politics or whatever it is, and bam, 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 every time you see those things. So you are microdosing cortisol and the stress response 1,000 times a day. So that is what's happening to us is we're bam, 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 bam. And every time you're getting stressed or you're feeling that anxiety or feeling a hit or whatever, boom, you're launching cortisol into your body. So think about that from a health standpoint alone. And this is the CDC did a study, and I think it was 2015, and they said something like 85% of all doctors' visits are directly related to stress and chronic elevation of cortisol. Because again,
Wow.
if you're chronically elevating cortisol, which is shutting down your immune system, your body's own ability to heal itself
Get
chronically,
sick.
like you're always shutting it down all day long, every day, are you going to get more likely to get cancer? Are you more likely to get sick? Heck yeah. Right. It
So if
just
you're
makes
stressed
total
out all the
common sense.
time, you're going to get sick.
Yeah. You're going to get sick somehow.
Mm.
Um, so uh, you're not going to be able to absorb the food because it's shutting down your digestive function, right? You're not going to be interested in sex because it's shutting down all of that kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of different things that are happening in your body physiologically because of this chronic elevation of cortisol. So, um,
Does the when you when we start to do if we feel that coming on, we start feeling okay. Here's the stress. I'm angry at this guy in front of me. I'm driving. Angry at this guy in front of me. If I take start taking breaths, does that help me start controlling that?
yeah. So, uh, the the body and how it's wired, let me just go into that real quickly.
Hmm.
You have this nervous part of the nervous system called the autonomic nervous system, which I always think it should be called the automatic nervous system because basically all your automatic functions are controlled by the autonomic. And what are the automatic functions? Breathing, breath rate, heart rate, blood pressure, perspiration response, digestion, all these things are just happening automatic. You're not thinking, oh, I need to, you know
I need to take a breath. I
I
should
need to
breathe
take a
breathing right
breath or
now.
I need
Yeah.
to digest my food. It just happens, right? So your autonomic nervous system is taking care of all of these things. When you have that stress response, your autonomic nervous system is kicking in. Now, it's kind of a yin yang. Everything is dualistic, right? Even in your body. So you have the sympathetic nervous system, which is the cranking up side, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the dropping down side. So this fight or flight mechanism, when you have that stress response, that's your sympathetic nervous system being triggered. Okay.
Hmm.
So again, all of the things that we were talking about with the adrenaline and the cortisol and all that stuff, that's all part of the sympathetic nervous system being activated. And so our sympathetic nervous system is almost hyperdrived, all constantly being activated. And that part of your brain is being activated, right? All of your sensory functions that you see, that you smell, that you hear, all of that goes through the part of the brain that is connected to that survival mechanism. And it makes sense. You see somebody walking at you, are they trying to kill me or are they here to give me a big hug and they're my friend? Right. So
Hmm.
all of those functions actually go through that part of the brain first. But when you meditate, there's a place in the brain where you can actually override those things so you can make those decisions faster and you're less reactive. That's part of what PTSD is. That whole thing has been hyper triggered to the point where everything
Hmm.
that's coming at you is triggering um, um, that hyper vigilance and that survival mechanism part of the brain is in like overdrive because of all the things that happened, right?
Yeah.
So there's the sympathetic nervous system, which is cranking everything up, but there's also the parasympathetic nervous system, which is dropping everything down. So they call that the rest, relaxation, and reset, rest and digest. They
Mm.
call it sometimes. Um, that parasympathetic nervous system, that relaxation response, is actually connected to your breath. So when you're
Mm.
relaxed, you breathe slower, deeper, fuller, right? So all the things we're talking about, hey, just take a deep breath. When you are relaxed, you'll naturally do that. So in other words, if you're relaxed, you're going to take a fuller breath. You're going to take a slower breath. But when you're all stressed out, oh my God, what's next? And you're going to start to the hyperventilation is like
Mhm.
that extreme of it where people hyperventilate, so you're really going to pass out, right? But your breathing becomes more shallow. Um, so when I was talking earlier about the operant conditioning, where the Pavlovian dog response, where you're conditioned, we get conditioned with things, and you can also use that in the reverse to help you. Um, in other words, if you slow your breathing consciously and almost forcibly, like you could be feeling stressed, but I'm going to slow my breath down right now. I'm going to take some nice deep full breaths. You will relax your body because you're breathing slow, deep, full, even, and that is connected in your body and wired in your body to say, oh, you're relaxed. So even if you're not feeling relaxed, if you force yourself to breathe slow, deep, fully, your body will then kick in the relaxation response. Does it make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah. So yeah, totally.
It's so
So it's
powerful.
good to think and just know to breathe
Yeah.
deep
It's so
breaths when you're coming into that
powerful, this
situation.
this relaxation, this operant conditioning of when you slow your breathing, your body will relax. That if you watch boxing or UFC or any kind of fighting, which I still like to do, super crazy violent. Actually, I've kind of kicked off of that lately. But anyway, I used to be totally into it, hardcore. Um, if they oftentimes they cut out, but when they show the coaching in the corner in between the rounds, and they get like a minute or maybe even less than that between rounds, the coaches, a lot of them will be like, give me a nice deep breath. And you'll see the fighter and he's like, because he's been fighting, right? So he's all amped up and they're like, He's like, give me another one. Hold it for a second. And they'll be calming the fighter down because he's so amped up and he's just like, and he's like in this crazy fight mode, truly, literally fight mode, right? That they'll calm the breathing of the guy down 2, 3, 4, 5 breaths. They could take 15 to 20 seconds um, of a 1 minute intermission between the
Intermission.
rounds, right? Why? Because cortisol, that cortical inhibition, where it shuts down the prefrontal cortex and your problem solving working memory, you can't hear the coach coaching you when you're that amped up. You're just, they're all scattered. You can see them, they're all
Hmm.
agitated and stuff like that. So when they calm them down, the cortisol backs off, you open up the prefrontal cortex, and then you'll hear the coach at the last 20 seconds of the round going, look, here's what he's doing. He's moving to the left every time he's going to do it. What you need to do is counter him by going blah, blah, blah. And they'll start instructing him, but then the fighter will be like, okay, I got it. Okay. Because they've relaxed a little bit. They've opened up the prefrontal
Hmm.
cortex. So that's how powerful it is that even the sports athletes at the highest level of the most stressed out you can be, literal combat, uses breathing techniques. Uh, Another example of the power of changing how you breathe to create a relaxation response in your body is our special forces do it. And I learned this from my niece Carla. Shout out to Carla if she actually hears these things. She's a yoga teacher in Belfast in Northern Ireland. Actually, she lives in London now, I think. But she's a yoga teacher, and she's posting on social media all the time. And one of her posts said, "Oh, our you know U.S. Special Forces uses breathing techniques, right?" And if I'm being totally honest, when I heard that, I kind of thought it halfway like, "Oh, that sounds like bullshit to me." And so I Googled it to see, really. And so I Googled, Special Forces breathing, blah blah blah, and I literally found an interview with the lieutenant commander in charge of Navy SEAL training, and they were teaching them two types of breathing exercises. One was like an exercise you're supposed to do every day, like we were talking about. You have to train it. So they
Hmm.
had an exercise you do every day, multiple times a day. And then one was what you did in the moment, like we are talking about that,
Hmm.
that trained response that you just do it
Yeah.
instinctively, right? The one that they did in the moment, they called tactical breathing. And so, like a sniper would just tactically breathe right before he's going to take a shot or whatever, right? And what was it? It was really simple. It was extend the inhale and extend the exhale and make them about the same. So it was like
Hmm.
slow it down, extend it. So, like,
2 seconds to two
3 second
seconds,
inhale,
or three to three.
3 second exhale,
Hmm.
and try to make it four.
Hmm. You just keep doing it over and over. Yeah.
And just do that for a couple of breaths, and it slows everything down, slows the heart rate down. It creates the relaxation response in your body, just we were saying, operant condition, and you slow the breath, your
Hmm.
body will relax. The other one, the exercise that they did, and they said do this multiple times a day throughout the day, was what they called box breathing. And it was your whatever your inhale was. So if you're inhaling, you hold it. So let's say you inhaled for 2 seconds, you hold for 2 seconds, you exhale for 2 seconds, you hold for 2 seconds. So it's a box, it's even. So then you'd extend that. Inhale for three, hold for three, exhale for three, hold for three, inhale for four, hold for four, exhale for four, hold for four. So whatever you're doing, you just try to do that. And you do that. And they just said do a couple of breaths multiple times a day. So it was kind of very similar to what we're talking about, very simple, but trained. You had to train it so that when you then did the tactical breathing, your body knew what was going on and it was more conditioned that way.
Hmm.
So um, this is the power of what happens. And so typically, um, what I was coaching when I was coaching people, I did a whole guided meditation. We'll do that one later. But for right now, it's literally my suggestion would just be um, to learn how to slow the breathing down and to take fuller inhales and fuller exhales and just do like the SEALs were calling tactical breathing. Just do that
Hmm.
multiple times, couple of times a day. It's just like, and so you're just doing a long inhale with a
When
long exhale. Um,
when
and my
when I was
suggestion, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
My suggestion would be to do that about 5 times a day. If you could do it every hour on the hour, like 10, 12 times a day, that would be awesome. And literally just taking 30 seconds to a minute to do some deep breathing. Again, the pattern interrupt, the interrupting that the habituated stress that you're in the middle of hectic stuff or whatever you're doing today, and you take a moment and you just drop yourself down a couple of notches. You don't have to be in perfect zenned out bliss mode, right? But it takes your stress level down a couple notches, and then it builds up during the day of the activity, and you take it and you bring it back down. You take it and it builds back up, and you take it and you bring it back down. Versus most of us get stressed out on the way to work. We get stressed out in that morning meeting. We get stressed out at the things happening here. We get stressed out, and it just keeps building, and it never gets back down till you leave. And then what do? You get drunk, or you do something crazy.
Stressed. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You do
So
whatever it is to compensate for that stuff. Maybe you go shopping and buy a bunch of shit, or
yeah.
whatever your thing
So
is.
um, with that, when I was teaching, um, I I had that anxiety, had that situation, and the kids knew. I told them, I said, in between class, if I'm sitting here with my hands like this, do it with my microphone, sorry, my hands like this, with my arms on the table, leave me alone. I'm taking a minute to breathe, and I literally, in between passing period, I would just because I was just so amped up because of everything going on. I would just take a minute and do some deep breaths. 1 minute's all it took in between every class,
And so
and
you were, it ended up working out perfectly because you
yeah,
were literally doing the pattern interrupt. You were doing it multiple times a day, and you
hmm
were retraining your body about how to respond to things, right? And you were connecting
yeah,
and lowering and dropping your stress levels. So and then, just so happened that teaching gave you this, the bell rings, you got periods in
natural,
between
yeah.
classes. So it worked
By the
out
way,
perfectly.
I was Pavlov's dog. The bell rang, I breathed. Bell rang, I breathed. So guess that does work.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. That's
I
totally
just
the
thought
truth.
about that just now. I'm like, oh,
You
maybe it was
literally were
Pavlov's dog.
Pavlov's dog. The bell's ringing, and you're going to take some deep breaths. That's awesome. That's hilarious.
Oh my gosh. But
So I
I
think,
think that's some good stuff.
yeah, I
Hopefully
think
people
on
got go ahead.
is that it? We're pretty complete for this one.
I think we're complete for this one. I'd like to talk more next time about once you've been to that, you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you realize, okay, or you're not that deep in. You're just like, you know what? I know I can be a little bit happier. I need to get a little bit more peace. But
Yep.
you're not deep into sadness
Yep.
or a problem. But let's
Which would
talk
be
about how
great.
to look inside yourself and how
Yes.
to go and what that means about going inside yourself and
Absolutely.
going
And
around.
and
So
in the
that'd be our
meantime,
next
if
one.
somebody's listening to this as a whole entire journey, that they practice the
Hmm
breathing, because one of the things that does happen when you turn and you start to look at inside,
yeah,
it can create stress responses in your body.
yeah,
Like you can
hmm
start to look at the shadows and some of the stuff about how you are behaving and what you're doing and what you're thinking. And some of those things aren't always um, rose petals
positive.
and
Yeah.
puppy
Um,
dogs,
and we'll talk about it next week. Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. There's good and there's
Yep.
bad,
Yep.
and it's you need to look at both, and just
Yes.
know that when you look at the bad, which you if you're real, you need to look at those.
Yep.
That's where the stress will come up,
Yes. So
and
if
that's
you
where you
can
need to work
practice
through.
the breathing ahead of time, you'll
Yeah.
have a way of releasing some of that automatically just by breathing into things. Like that's a huge and important pattern. So,
My challenge is when you start feeling the stress, whether it's driving, whether it's at work, whether it's coming home, whether you're looking at your bills, and just take a deep breath. Just say, hey, this is when I need to stop, drop, and
yep,
breathe.
yep,
So stop, drop down, and start breathing.
yep,
And so I that's my challenge, everybody, this week. So
yep.
I'm going to do that challenge, and I'm driving. So understand, I'm in the challenge with you guys. We'll see what happens next week.
I
I'll
always
be
say it's
honest.
really funny how some people react, how some people are in their cars driving, right? They can be really nice outside, and then they get in their car, and then they're just like total animals. We're like, whoa, what is going on?
I had a friend that said, this is totally off topic. He says, you know those new Waymo cars? By the way, in Arizona, we have Waymo everywhere.
Nice.
He goes, I hate the Waymo cars because I drive by. He goes, I can't yell at the person because there's nobody to yell at. He goes, what do I do? I'm like, wait a
Nobody to
minute. How
flip
do
off.
I can't get angry at you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
So
hilarious.
yeah, so that's my challenge. Just when because you will feel it when you start feeling any kind of stress, big, minor, small, whatever it is, do the breathing.
Yep,
Just take some breaths. You don't got to go down to meditation or go to the whole world. Just take take a minute. Go take some
that's
nice
awesome.
relaxed breath. Like Sheldon
Perfect.
said, either the box or just do 3 in, 3 out, or
Yep.
do the box. So
Yep. And just so everybody knows, we are going to skip a week next week because I'm going to be
yes,
away. We won't be able to record, so it'll probably
Mhm.
end up being 2 weeks. We might be able to do it. We'll
Yes,
see. So anyway, um, we thank everybody who is listened to this point or watched or
Yep.
whatever. That's amazing. I think every time I look, I go, oh, wow, people are actually watching this thing.
And
Awesome.
we're on YouTube and Spotify, just so you know.
Yep. So we're
So
on YouTube and Spotify. We'll
mhm,
have all the links down in the description and all that kind of stuff. And when we post it on
yeah,
Facebook or Instagram or whatever, we'll have the links available for you. So we thank you guys for following us on this journey. Hope you're getting something out of it.
yeah,
Um,
I'm excited
and
about
that's the
it. So
conclusion of this episode with Next Level Real Talk, Sheldon and David. Awesome. Awesome.
you
You
guys
guys
have a
take
great
care.
week. If not, maybe two. We'll let you know. If you haven't, subscribe to our channel so that you know whenever we post one, you'll get it automatically.
Yes, that's
So if it's next
absolutely
week
the
or
best
if it's
thing to
two
do.
weeks, so go ahead and subscribe, please.
Yeah. All right. Thank you
You
guys
guys have a
much.
great week, and we'll see you soon. Have a
Take care.
great day.